Hello class, this is Brian from financialtrainingschool.com and welcome to BO206 chart setups. So by now you should have realized that the knowledge contained within these lessons is starting to snowball. So as we move onwards, I'll just keep adding additional tools into your arsenal so that you can effectively tackle the markets, so that you're ready for everything that the markets throw at you. But in the end, it's ultimately up to you to figure out which tools are suitable for the appropriate markets. Because in my videos, I don't teach you every possible scenario, I only teach you a preset amount. And then, because I told you multiple times, markets are dynamic. So you're going to go out there one day and you're going to see something that I didn't teach you. So you have to recognize that it's different from what I taught you, and you need to learn to adapt. And over time, through experience and observation, and after encountering that market a number of times, you'll learn which methods are correct for that market, and you're trading accordingly. So that's up to you guys. BO205 was the preview of the snowball effect, since it relied on your price action techniques and your required knowledge from pattern formations in GT203 in order to test you guys. So if you haven't watched BO205 yet, you should watch it, because that testing video is kind of nice. The whole format of testing you from one side to the next is nice. I think that's a nice touch for the whole teaching aspect. As for this video, chart setups, this will combine BO106, which is chart timeframes, and BO202 up to 205. So basically in chart timeframes, the point that I emphasized the most was zooming out, because when you zoom out, you get to see the big picture. And yes, here I'm aware that binary options, you mainly only care about the immediate future, but knowing what's going on this week or month isn't harmful. And this is usually the flaw of short-term traders for binary options, or forex scalpers, or stock day traders, etc. They often get consumed by the short-term outlook and often forget about their surroundings. And this is a problem, because let's say in the overall big picture we're in a downtrend, but this week we're consolidating or we're pulling back in the trend like the lightning bolt, and it's going to go up. Okay, fine, that's fine. For this week, that's fine. But next week, if you enter with the same mindset that we're going up, but we're in fact about to go down, then you're going to get caught on the wrong side, and that's bad. So in order to get the big picture, full-time traders have to do their homework on the weekend. So this is financial training school, so technically I'm your teacher, and technically I can ask you to do homework, but the homework isn't for me. I'm not going to grade you in the homework. It's for yourself. You have to prep yourself for the markets before you start trading. Because if you don't prep yourself, that's kind of like getting caught with your pants down, and when you get caught with your pants down in the markets, you're going to lose money, and that's just stupid. That's like giving money away. Why would you do it? It's better to prep yourself than to not prep yourself, because it's okay to have losses, as I explained in previous videos. If you take a high probability trade and it just breaks out, it goes against you in that minor percentage that it went against you, that's fine. At least you lost for the right reasons, that you just entered at the wrong time. But if you enter and you don't know the big picture because something's about to happen, news release or whatever, and you lose for the wrong reasons, that's being unprepared, and that's just a really stupid mistake to make. So it's better to lose for the right reasons than for the wrong reasons. So homework in the trading world refers to setting up your charts, reading up on news reports, or watching the news channels, or watching a news conference that passed in the previous week, right? Something along those lines. Now for me personally, regardless of trading or not, I force myself to set up my charts via my Forex Weekly Analysis, since it's an obligation for my newsletter. As a side note, you might want to go to fxweeklyanalysis.com. I just set up this domain, so just type this in and you'll get directed to my Forex Weekly Analysis. I usually publish it on my blog every Saturday afternoon around 2 to 3 p.m. somewhere in that time area. It's in Eastern time zone, by the way. So you might want to bookmark that page and refer back to that every Saturday or Sunday or whatever before you start trading, so you get the big picture. Or alternatively, you can also sign up for my newsletter, which is found on the right sidebar after you click the link. I send it out after I publish it, so if you don't remember to check the page, then you'll get it in your email every Saturday afternoon. And I know what you're thinking. Homework. Homework was dreadful when you did it in school. It is, yes, schoolwork is tedious and hard work and all that stuff. It makes you practice. Here it's not actually that hard. It's quite easy once you start doing it, because the big picture doesn't change that frequently anyways. You draw your lines and you wait for price to get your levels before you react. That's it, plain and simple. Because think about it. If you draw a trend line on, say, a 5-minute chart, and the bounces between the trend lines takes about 5 candles, or 12 candles. Let's say 12 candles for simplicity. So 12 candles is an hour. Okay, so it's going to take an hour to bounce from one trend line to the next trend line. So that takes 12 candles. Now let's say you draw a monthly trend line, and let's say it takes 12 candles again. 12 candles on a monthly chart means 12 months, which is 1 year. So how often do you think you change the lines? Not very often. If it takes a year to bounce between the trend lines, it's going to take quite a while before you change the trend lines. So me personally, for my Forex Weekly analysis, I probably change it every quarter, so every 3 months, or maybe 2 quarters, every 6 months, I'll change it. That's like a major revamp of the chart setups for me. But usually, if you go to every Saturday and you read what I write, basically the charts stay the same for a certain number of times, so say a month or 2 months, and they stay the same. The only thing that changes is the write-up, because outlook changes based on where we are in position relative to the chart, relative to the trend lines and support resistance levels, and what's coming up. That's what the forecast is, and that's just how it works. So it's not actually that much work. But after this lesson, I want you to get into the habit of setting up your own charts and then compare it to mine to see if you're on the right track. So after this lesson, go out and do the chart setups yourself, and then every Saturday go read my chart analysis, see if we're on the same right track, or if you're against me, then email me and tell me that, oh, I don't quite agree with you here, blah, 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 whatever. Once you have it drawn, you can zoom out while trading to remind yourself of the big picture. So I often do this while I'm trading. So let's say in the middle of a trading session, I zoom out because I'm not sure what's exactly going to happen in the markets, and then I zoom out to see my Forex Weekly analysis because I have it drawn on the same charts. So now I'm like, oh look, that's why price is consolidating right now, because we're at a very heavy support resistance level. We're on the monthly level. As you'll see in the video, I will color code the different lines as if I'm drawing my Forex Weekly analysis to show you the steps through it. But you see the monthly support resistance level, so you're like, oh, that's why. That's why price is not moving that much. Or we're near a trend line. That's why we're consolidating. Or whatever. That's why it's nice to have it drawn, to have your charts prepped, so that when you zoom out, you're like, oh, I remember now. So that's just so that you don't be like, oh my god, what's going on? What's going on? Is there news? Whatever. People panic when they don't know what's going on. So if you have it prepped, you know what's going on. So that's just nice. So that also, in addition, if you have it prepped ahead of time, you're like, okay, we're at a trend line right now. Like for instance, when we get to Australian USD, you'll see this. There's actually an upward channel. If you saw the FX Weekly analysis this week, then you know what I'm talking about. But when we do this video, you'll see it there as well. There's an upward channel on the Australian USD right now, and we're right at the upper trend line. So we're getting ready to bounce down, and we're going to see this in the charts. And that's why price is consolidating right now. The traders are basically contemplating whether to consolidate to move up, to break the trend line, or to move back down. And that's what we're going to see when we do the video. So this lesson will be done in real time, and I'll set up the charts as if I'm doing my Forex Weekly analysis, except I'll do it in free stock charts instead of MT4. But my Forex Weekly analysis, if you read them, they're done on MT4, so the charts will look different if you compare the two. So this is on free stock charts, and you should watch GT 110 to fully understand how I use free stock charts, because I'm going to be using tab browsing and individual charts here. So it's just some things to clarify. If you don't know how to fully use free stock charts, you should watch GT 110. So let's get started on the chart examples. So this is going to be the setup. As you can see, the top, unlike the other videos where they were all the same tabs, we have different tabs here: the Loonie, Aussie, the Euro, and Cable. So that's how it is, and we start on the monthly chart because that's normally how I do this. I go monthly chart, and then weekly chart, daily chart, and then 4-hour chart, and I stop there because going beyond that, you don't really see the big picture that well on the hourly chart or 2-hour chart. Focus up to the 4-hour chart, and that's basically it. Most people stop at the daily chart, but I go to the 4-hour chart since it's nice, because a lot of people use the 4-hour chart, especially Forex traders. So that's a very popular time frame, so you focus on that. That's 4 different time frames for each chart, so 4 pairs, 4 time frames, 16 time frames total. I'm not sure how long this video is going to take since I'm doing this in real time. It could last up to an hour because that's normally how long I take when I initially set up my Forex Weekly analysis. As you can see, I got rid of the side values, so I don't even know if the recording screen is picking it up, but I made them really small on the side because we don't care about the values, we just care about the shapes, the trend lines, the support levels, resistance levels, potential patterns that could be forming, etc. You care about the candle shapes, so you care about pin bars and dojis and all that stuff. I got rid of the dates at the bottom as well because that's to enlarge the chart as big as possible, because I noticed on here we only go up to 2009 on the monthly chart, whereas on my FX Weekly analysis I go up to 2006 data, so I get an additional 3 years of data on my chart, so I display more. So I just tried to make the chart as big as possible so that everything is clear. We're going to start with a Loonie, and then we'll go through each pairs. For the monthly chart, I use black because black is heavy, right? Black is like the prominent shade. It's not a color, right? It's a shade. So black is for monthly. The weekly chart will be either pink or magenta, depending on what color it shows up on for you. And then the daily is aqua blue, and H4 4-hour chart is going to be red. Everything under 4 hours is blue for me, so that when I trade, I can differentiate between what's on my Forex Weekly Analysis chart and what's on my intraday trading charts. So let's just go with, so this is the monthly chart. One level, let's just draw this at the bottom because this is what you would do in a normal setup anyways. Like this is support resistance, right? So this is the low here, and then it's black already, so let's just leave it like that. And then let's put another level like that, because these peaks here kind of peaks there and the bottom there, and that wick right there touched the top there. So this is kind of contained inside there, mini channel for going bouncing up and down like that. Otherwise, if we draw a trend line, I'm gonna draw a trend line like this, connecting either this point to that point, and we're just gonna change this so that they're both black all the way. So something like that, or maybe we'll shift another one, something like this. Oh, I forgot to change the default. So let's do that default. That's default. Something like that. But as you can see, this one, it already broke that, so it's not that well. It did stop there, and then it went down after breaking up a little bit. So depending on which one you want to keep, we just leave it there for now. Usually when you draw these chart setups and all that stuff, you leave them on for longer than you would on a shorter time frame. Like I mentioned before, I change them every quarter or every 2 quarters or something like that. That's a preference on your own. Through trading, through experience, you'll learn when it's time to remove the trend line. But some people leave them on forever, because in the future sometimes it's just going to bounce randomly off of the same line as before. So that's it for the monthly chart. We're done because there's nothing else to draw. You could try to fit a level in between here in the middle, but there's really, if you put a level here, there's no bounce aside from it. Over here, you put it down here, same thing. Maybe you can fit one there, but not really. It's not that clear right now here. So let's just switch to the weekly chart now. So weekly chart, as you'll see from the weekly chart, not all of the bounces are accurate because free stock charts kind of shifts the line sometimes. So for instance, right here, when we drew these trend lines, we connected them to the tip of this wick, but it's actually to the next right beside it. So you may want to adjust them. So see how it's on this side, you might want to move them slightly. Although this is just to be perfectionist, if you wanted to do that. Otherwise, it's not that big of a deal, but it's just nice to be more accurate. And this one, see these wicks right there, you might want to move it so that it's slightly above, so that's more accurate that way. And this one is fine. That one is, we're just gonna adjust it to say there, and this one we're gonna adjust it to there. And then when we switch to the daily chart, it's gonna be off again, and you just keep adjusting them until they're right. So now for weekly levels, I'm going to look for the SR level that we couldn't draw previously that I set in the middle here, where this looks more clearly here, because you see this low right here, you see these highs here, and you see the highs here of these wicks. So let's just look for a level in between there. So let's say we put it somewhere like, see something like that. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to try to get the bottom of these wicks here, the tops of these wicks, and the tops of these wicks. So something like that in the middle, and let's just change the color to magenta or whatever this is, pink. And let's see any other levels. Not really, nothing I can really see. You could put another trend line though. Maybe connecting this one to there like that, and we're just gonna change the color again. So let's change it to pink or magenta, whatever that color is, and so that we're expecting, see right now it's consolidating near here. It could potentially have trouble at this SR level to go down, and then if it does break below it like it did here, but it doesn't close yet, it might bounce around here near the trend line, something like that. So that's just what we're looking for. You might want to maybe consider making a parallel line to this one. Or no, hold on. Parallel line, pink, default, and we want to move it to say something like that. I don't know, you're just trying to be creative, right? See this wick right there, wick, something like that. Normally on the monthly chart you wouldn't see that because of the depending on where the month closed, it wouldn't show this, but based on the weekly chart it does show this, so that's another potential level. So these two trend lines are close together. So that would conclude the weekly chart. Now let's move on to the daily chart, where we'll be using aqua blue. So zooming out again, you can see that levels are slightly skewed. We're just going to adjust them like so, and this one is pretty spot on. That one's spot on, still there. This one looks pretty good. Might want to make another level for trend line. See, something like that. And we're going to change this to aqua. So that this trend line right there, it did break here, but it could potentially form another one right there. So this drawing multiple trend lines gives you adding up accumulation of probability. So this is a cross of the trend lines, which could be a potential bounce point if it does get there. Otherwise, what else looks good? I don't want to draw it just yet. On the 4-hour chart, we're going to focus on trend lines around these things, but you could like draw something like that and then draw another one on top. So say that one like that, and then, but I want to do that on the 4-hour chart. Don't want to do that here yet. It's more accurate there since we're focusing on this region only. Otherwise, for the big picture, that's pretty much all you can draw for now. Otherwise, maybe you could draw a level right there like that. Just change it to blue, and maybe move it down to say something like that, like right there. So that bottom bounce, these tops here, this is secondary SR level in addition to this magenta level, and it didn't quite bounce there, but it's going to consolidate near there. So let's just switch to the H4 now, 4-hour chart. Now we're going to be using red, and see, this is how far back you can see. You can only see back to the beginning of May, so just a few months. So I want to draw these trend lines here. So draw, say something like that, and we're going to change this to red. For the 4-hour chart, default, make a parallel line, try to find a channel that fits in between there, something like that. Make another parallel line for the top levels, kind of like that, and maybe one more level for the really tops like that, and we'll move that one up slightly, and that's it. So this would be how you set up your chart, so that once it's set up, once this is set up, for example, on your chart, if you switch to say a 5-minute chart or 15-minute chart when you're trading, the level show up. So look, see this line there, this is kind of why this thing fits. But on a smaller time frame, you might have to readjust so that you draw your minor trend lines in blue, so that you remember that these are your intraday trading time frames, and then you just trade them, and then you're like, oh look, the red one, it reminds you that there's a trend line there, so that if you zoomed out to the 4-hour chart, you're like, oh, I remember I drew a line there before, but now we're focusing on the blue, which is in the intraday, which looks like that. So something like that. That's basically how you use it. So this concludes the loonie. Now let's move on to the Australian USD. So I'm just going to switch this back to the 4-hour chart beforehand. And so this is now Australian USD, and as you can kind of tell, it's pretty much been going up for a while, for the past couple years after this part, and then it got choppy recently. So we're going to be focusing on SR levels again, because this uptrend, there's no point in drawing a trend line, because if you draw one, it got broken around here as soon as it started consolidating. So let's just focus on support resistance levels, and I want to draw one, something like that at the close of these candles. So let's just change this back to black, and then we're going to draw another one above at, say, right there like that, the close of those candles. And then let's just maybe put one there, so that if it does fall down, it gets to there. and maybe another one there. This is long term because as soon as we switch to the weekly chart, we're not gonna see these levels anymore anyways. But if you do them and you keep them on for say the next 2 years, it might come into play then. You never know. So that's just how it is. We could draw a trend line though if you wanted to. You're connecting the very lows. So say this low to here, because this didn't get broken yet. Let's just change that to black though. Or you could draw a trend line, something like that. I don't know, something like that. Maybe in the future when price comes back down, it's gonna play a role there. Something like that. These trend lines aren't that important yet because it's not gonna wrap anything up anyways. So let's just switch to the weekly time frame now. Weekly time frame, you can see it's pretty much been uptrend straight up. So but you can see there's lower highs so far, but we don't know if there's going to be a lower high yet. Let's just draw a trend line like that and change the colors to pink, and then I'm going to readjust this line so that up there like that, so that this is a potential level of curiosity. If it comes up to it, is it going to touch it? If it does touch it, is it going to go down or up or whatever happens there? And then maybe we want to draw a level right there as well, possibly, or right there. That looks like a nice level as well for resistance, minor channel within the bigger one. And then in the middle here, there's nothing really worth drawing. Maybe nope, that's not worth it. Maybe we'll put another one right there like that, so that you get these highs there, the low wicks there, that low there, this, we got some red here, resistance there from this bar and that one. So that's it for weekly. Now let's move on to the daily, which is where we're going to focus on this trend here. So daily, so I'm just going to zoom in since we care more about this trend here. Let's just draw from the low to say something like that, and we'll pick light blue again, or aqua. That, create a parallel line because there's multiple bottom wicks like that, and you can see it's kind of getting steeper around there. And then we'll draw the top one, the very top one, I guess around there, because of that edge there. Or we can ignore that breakout and then we can draw one closer, something like that. And then you can see it's actually not, there's a middle one more like that as of late. So that's what we're focusing on. And now moving into the H4. Actually, yeah, let's just move to H4. You can see, so now let's just move levels to adjust accordingly. And everything else looks good. So price, as you can see based on the channel, it always moves. Recently it's been choppy. As you can zoom out, right? As you zoom out, it goes up, then after a while it bounces down. This is 4-hour chart, so this lasts 4 hours and then it comes back down, goes up, comes back down immediately. Here it starts to get choppy, here it got choppy again, here it bounced down immediately, and then here we're getting choppy again. So maybe it's eventually going to go down to here, to this lower trend line, or maybe even up to there, to that trend line, or maybe down to this SR level, something like that. And then while you're trading this, you're going to keep this in your mind, because you're like, okay, we're near a trend line right now. It could be consolidating before the big drop, or it's going to drop soon. So you want to be careful to not place calls, that many calls. You're focusing on puts while you're trading. So that concludes the Aussie. Now let's move on to the Euro. So the Euro is actually quite interesting because we've been down here for quite a while the Aussie was up. So as everybody should know, the crisis right now with the Eurozone. Let's just pick a level. Look for let's just pick the low of that. Absolute low. Change this to black. Set as default. And then we're going to make another one right there. Like that. Or maybe, yeah, let's just do that. No, let's pick the bottom like that. And then let's see, tops. This chart looks different on my Forex Weekly Analysis because I have more data. But when you look on that one, you'll see that the Euro USD has been going up and down for the past couple years. And here you can see a couple bounces as well. Down, then up, then down, then up, then down. So it's starting to project to go up again if the Eurozone is solved. But I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. But anyways, that's pretty much it. I don't want to get into the trend lines for this area yet. We'll draw those on the weekly charts. So let's switch to the weekly chart and then see here now it's kind of more clearly evident of where the trend line should be. So if you connect, say, the highs like that, and then this being the channel, you can create a parallel line like that, and then you can create another parallel line for the other lows based on something like that. See this low there and that low there, and then based on the recent highs you can create another one like that. So this is kind of like Australian USD, except this is a downward channel. So moving forwards, you can see we might go up to reach this weekly trend line and then bounce back down like we did over here. And yeah, that's pretty much the only spot that it might do that there. That's why I drew it based on that. Otherwise, if it goes up here, breaking this trend line would mean breaking this downward channel, which would mean it could potentially keep going up from that point. Otherwise, if it doesn't break this point, it's just going to go right back down. Whereas here in the bottom, it didn't break down, so it went back up. So this was a bounce point there. And that's it for weekly. Switch to the daily now. Daily, is there anything to adjust? We could adjust this one so that's more accurate like that. This one, let's just move it down like that. This one, move it down slightly like that. And this one should be like that. In terms of daily chart, let's draw a level right here. These are lows, which could potentially be SR levels, which it did bounce there, but it broke here briefly, and then it started touching or flirting with the weekly trend line, and then went back down. Here's another level right there. Looks nice because the bounce, 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 bounce. So say something like that, and then let's draw another level like this one right there, like that. Bounce, broke slightly, bounce there, and then bounce there, right there, right at this weekly trend line right there. And then this is just for the next couple weeks. As soon as it breaks this outer channel line, that's when you start drawing all of these levels above. Otherwise, until then, these aren't really concerned because you don't think price is going to go up there anyways until it breaks this one. You'd be more interested in the downside, but given what you saw previously, there isn't enough data to draw the lines down there. We currently couldn't break really past this one, so we're just seeing what happens now. So let's switch to the 4-hour chart. 4-hour chart, you can kind of see there's an upward trend line, kind of like that, right there. So that if you were trading, for example, you could have been placing puts here for like the end of the day, for example, since these are 4-hour charts, so you can trade for the next 4 hours or something along those lines. See that forming, and then you might see another one like that from there. Or actually, no, that's not that great. Let's just move it down to adjusting it so that's something like that. And we put a H4 level right there like this as an SR level, and that's basically it. So if you have these drawn and you're zoomed in to say the 5-minute chart, and see in the 5-minute chart, if you see none of your lines, then you're like, okay, there's nothing to worry about in the immediate future, because you're like, we're not really near anything. You see it up here vaguely. If you zoom out, you're like, okay, there they are. That's where the lines are. So when it gets close to these lines, that's when you pay attention, because something critical could happen on the bigger time frame. But until then, you're in open market. You can trade wherever you like inside here, and you just draw it accordingly. You might draw, your lines like that, and then you change it to blue while you're trading. And then until the red lines or magenta lines pop up, you kind of ignore the big ones, because there's nothing there. You draw them and then you trade. So, and something like that. So that in the bigger time frame of things, this looks more like a symmetrical triangle, and on the 5-minute chart it may look like that, but then you might switch to the hourly chart and you're like, oh, we're actually still in the middle between the bigger time frames. And then when you switch to the 4-hour chart, you're like, okay, yeah, we still have some room to move before something big happens, because this is exactly in the middle. So on the bigger time frame, this is the 50% level. So that concludes the Euro USD. Now let's move on to cable, the last pair before we end off the video. I don't know how long this video is right now. I think it's like 30 something minutes in the recording, because I'm doing this in multiple recordings for each pair. So let's see now. This looks more like a symmetrical triangle, for those of you that recall the test in BO205. So let's just draw a black line like that, and then another one like this, and that looks like a symmetrical triangle. See, the bounces got smaller and smaller, and then here's going to start consolidating. And then that's all I want to draw on the monthly chart. Let's just switch to the weekly chart to see what else is there. Is there anything to adjust? No, it doesn't look like it. You could draw a support line right there. We'll change that to black. Or I mean, no, this is weekly now, so this is pink. So that's a pink line like that, and maybe we want to draw another level like that. That top. We're ignoring this part here. Because as I mentioned before with the symmetrical triangles, especially in BO205 and GT203, it could either break out in up or down direction or consolidate. So given that these peaks like this, given the multiple bounces like this could potentially just turn into range instead of breaking out. So that's a possible outcome, so that you know what would happen and you react accordingly. Something like that. So now let's see, go to the daily chart. Daily chart, you can see levels like that right there. And drawing this one, you draw aqua. Yeah, that looks pretty good where it is. Maybe move it slightly. And what else do we see? In the short term, there is a minor trend line like that. So that we see this ascending triangle inside our range. So if it breaks this point, this is pretty much halfway between the magenta lines, so it could potentially go up to there. Otherwise it could bounce down and then touch this. Maybe it could go down, maybe not, who knows. Yeah, that's it for daily chart, 4-hour chart. So we're almost done this video. 4-hour chart, there's really nothing I would add. Maybe you can add a level right there like that. So this is a minor SR level in addition to your other one. See a minor trend line. kind of like that. And let's just change this to red. Because this is the lows there, the highs there, and then this is kind of choppy there. Waiting to see what happens. And this almost touched it there and almost touched it there. Then making another one, you could add it like that. Right there, something like that. Yeah, so that concludes it. But for this one, if you zoomed into the 5-minute chart and you're trading, you would be careful around these levels. See how this one reacted there. It broke right through that one, but then came back down, reacted there again. Here you can see it bounced like that, and that's it. So, or if you switch to say the 15-minute chart, you might see a lot more, and you might be like, oh, this is actually in the middle. So until we get to down here or down here, it's safe trading for whatever you're doing. So here, like this, if you're trading today, I guess this is news came out this morning, I guess, to cause this spike, and then it's just been slowly going down throughout the afternoon, and you'd be trading that all along the way. So that concludes the chart example. So this is how I set up my Forex weekly analysis every Saturday. So hopefully this is enough. So basically just apply your price action techniques onto bigger time frames. If you don't want to focus on all the time frames, pick one that you like. Some people pick the daily chart or the 4-hour chart. Those are the two popular choices for the people who swing trade Forex. So they trade on a weekly basis, so they do this every week. So daily or 4-hour chart, and then after you do it, go on my blog or fxweeklyanalysis.com. That will direct you to my blog. On that page we'll have all my Forex weekly analysis. You can go through the past couple weeks, or actually, well, not past couple weeks, the whole entire archive of it. I have about I've been doing this since July 1st 2011, so it's been more than a year now. So every week, so that's like a year's worth. So 52 weeks plus, so 56 or something, 56 entries on there for that. Lots of examples there for price action and overall stuff, and you can apply the patterns as we saw on, especially on this pair. There's a symmetrical triangle, which is a pennant, right? So this is a pennant, and then you saw on the lower time frames a ascending triangle. So again, that's another pattern. So just apply your patterns. And then I didn't talk about it really. I didn't talk much about the candlestick patterns. But I mean, if you pointed out and you saw dojis or pin bars or shooting stars or hammers or whatever at the specific points, then that might help your analysis as well. But otherwise, I'm done talking for this video. So that's it. As usual, my recommended brokers are 24 Option, Bank to Barney, and Trade Rush. Make sure you guys use my links to sign up so that you can get an hour of tutoring with me. Full details can be found at ftstutor.com. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.